Welcome back to Get Your Voice Out There. I'm Roberta Chadis, and this show is really dedicated to people who have something incredible to say about what they're doing in the community. And today is no different. We have an amazing show to give you today with Tony Toledo, our storyteller. And I just want to get started with the show right away because I know you're going to tell us lots of stories. Welcome.
Hello, Roberta. Marvelous to be here.
Oh, Tony, really, what a pleasure.
That's great.
After the weather we've had, we can just...
snowing our way, you're digging through China. And we get over here, and I have to say that just coming in and looking around, and I thought, now, I know BevCam is here at the high school. I wonder where. And then I come in, and I was so pleased that I didn't hit you when I went around the corner. And I looked up, and I said, it's my friend Roberta. I'm at the right place. Look at this.
You are.
Do you guide all of your guests into the studio like that? That's beautiful.
I do. I meet them in the snow, in the parking lot.
I especially like the flags that you had, motioning me in to let me know where to park. It was just great.
Was it good?
Absolutely.
That's good. Well, our audience may not really know that much about you like I do. So I think we should start off with the concept of how do you become a storyteller? What happened to you in your life?
It's that beautiful, long, convoluted road of finding out what I wanted to do with my life. Mm-hmm. When I was in high school, I got an award for history, and I look back on that, and that's because history was all stories, and I had great teachers. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. I went in the Army for 3 years, right out of high school. It was right in 75 to 78, after Vietnam. I was not going to be in any battles anywhere. I got sent to Germany. I loved over there, running around and getting on the trains and seeing everything. I actually signed up for a couple classes because my buddy was going to study electrical engineering. That is not the way my brain works.
I can't.
I got C's.
I'm scared thinking about
I got C's in the classes, so I passed, but I had no passion in it. It was like pulling teeth to get this stuff done. I got done with the Army. I got a European discharge. I traveled around Europe for a couple months, came back home, worked in a tire factory in Bryan, Ohio that had all these cylinder block walls that had no windows, so no dreams could get into the factory. And you just stood there making these giant tires. And then I decided, my one buddy said, I want to ride bicycles across the country. And I thought, what? He goes, come with us. And I said, all right. And I quit 6 months after I'd worked at this factory, and we got on a bus and we went to Oregon and rode bicycles from Oregon to Virginia.
So how far is that, Tom?
Well, our path was 5,000 miles. It was convoluted, all sorts of things. I hit a cow on my bicycle in Oregon. We had a run-in with a skunk.
God.
We were going down the Appalachian Mountains, and a guy clocked us on a car behind, 54 miles an hour.
On a bike?
On a bicycle with all this stuff on our helmet. Scared the daylights out of me, though, because I thought if you hit a rock or you hit a dog, I'm dead. So we only did that once. But we had great fun camping out, seeing America. Still didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. When I got done with that bicycle trip, I went back to Ohio, and I thought, I'll start college. I have the GI Bill. So I showed up on campus, and I said, where do I go? What classes? And they said, did you register? And I said, what? And they said, you have to go this process. I said, what? They said, yes, you have to go to this room, and then you have to sign up. And I said, what? So I had to wait until January of 1980, got into college. I was in one German class with a guy who was a biology major. It's the only class we ever would have shared. He got his PhD. He's much smarter than me, but I love rubbing up against him. He lives in Greece, where he's from, and he comes to Boston about every 2 years, and we go out to the Daily Catch in Hanover Street. Do you know that? Mm-hmm. Magnificent fish, and he's got all sorts of great stuff. Now, this isn't the longest, most winding answer you ever had on your show.
No.
And you go, well, let's see if I can beat that. Here we go. So I get done with my degree in international relations, and then I thought, I don't know what I want to do. Well, I'm broke, so I should go ahead and earn money. So I went to law school for a year and a half. And I thought, if I thought that the engineering stuff was miserable, law school was even more so.
I can't picture you in law school.
And then I ended up coming out to Massachusetts on my bicycle in 1984. I rode from Toledo to Malden to visit my cousin. Two big destination points, Toledo and Malden, big on everybody's maps. I was
born in Malden, so it's very important to me.
I get over there, and my cousin was here, so I wanted to visit him. Hadn't seen him in about 10 years. The moment I got off my bicycle, it was like we hadn't seen, we just saw each other last week.
Yeah.
I remember Dave was frying up green tomatoes, and he gave them to me.
Mm-hmm.
And after I dropped out of law school, I ended up moving out here and staying with him what I thought was going to be a couple months. But it turns out that I found out about storytelling. I heard Judith Black on the radio, a magnificent storyteller out of Marblehead.
She is.
And oh, just great. And I went to see her at Lesley University with Dave, and she was doing a show called Band in the Western Suburbs. And I told Dave, I heard this on the radio, we got to go see this. And he goes, what? We're going to pay $8 to listen to somebody tell stories? Dave, that's what we came out from Ohio for, get some culture. And I saw her, and in that moment, I had an epiphany, and I said, this is what I want to do. So I found out about Sharing the Fire Storytelling Conference, which has been going on. This is the 33rd year. It'll be in Amherst. All the information is at lanes.org, L-A-N-E-S, the League for the Advancement of New England Storytelling.org. And that's going to be at the end of March, the 27th, 28th, and 29th at the UMass Amherst Conference Center. It's my favorite storytelling weekend of the whole year. I've been going to this conference and I learned so much about storytelling, and I found that I really loved it. So before, where I was taking those things with the engineering and with the law, it was like studying for a half hour felt like it was 16 hours, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I would slog through it. Found out about storytelling. I could be reading a book about stories and working on a new story, and suddenly 6 hours have gone by, and it felt like 5 minutes. You know.
Now I see you because you do this Walnut Street gig every week. And I see when you're taking notes, when people come up to the microphone for this event. And I don't know how you do it, but you come up with the most innovative little stories about what they were doing. And I'm curious as to what kind of a background, I mean, what do they teach you, or is it just something that came out of you? It
came out of me. That whole thing is called Speak Up Spoken Word Open Mic, and it's hosted at the Walnut Street Coffee Cafe in Lynn at 157 Walnut Street. So every Wednesday for the last almost 7 years now, I've been hosting that. So I like that people come up, they've got 5 minutes on the open mic, and it's great because you never know who's going to be up there. And part of the thing, if I don't know you, there's a couple fallback things that I'll say. So say you showed up, but if I'm introducing all my other friends with a couple sentences and all I say is, oh, this is Roberta, then it makes it like, oh, what am I, chopped liver? So there's a lot of things I can do that say like, oh, ladies and gentlemen, we're so glad that we've got this young lady come over here to the microphone now. She's got the world's biggest collection of number 2 pencils. She's got pencils from 43 different states, 17 different colors, purple of which are her favorite, because every time she writes with a purple pencil, she has a new dog story pop out of the end of it.
Oh my
and she's
God.
just amazing. She's not going to talk about her dogs today, though. Today, she's come over here to talk about the chicken and how she was scared in her youth. And then, you know, you stand up and say, what? I never had it. The only thing I ever had was chicken salad. Oh, so sorry. That telepathic connection must have been a little rusty. We didn't have enough coffee to connect up with each other.
But it's all about creativity. It's this, what turns you on? It's unbelievable.
Oh, I just love that. It's funny, when I first started doing Speak Up, I was trying really hard to be clever. And I found that trying to be clever was falling flat for me. It was just too much work. So I just trust that I can do something that people are going to be able to say, oh. And the big thing, all it is saying, here's a person coming to the microphone, so everybody be quiet. Now this person's going to get the microphone. And then when you're done, and I pull out the coins, and I hold up a coin, everybody says together, the whole audience, this coin.
I know it.
And then we go ahead and say, this coin was used as a dog collar for your dog Jessie. And it was on there before it said rabies vaccination, but I took it to an anvil and I pressed it into this coin that looks like it's from Switzerland. But we want you to have it, and if you smell it just a little bit, it'll smell like Jessie.
Oh my God, you're going to make me cry.
So you have those things, you know something about people, and then sometimes if the person is my friend, I go ahead and I can put something in that's just poking fun at the whole thing. But I never do that for a person who's the first time on the microphone, because they're so fragile. And I don't want them to think that, oh, he was making fun of me. But if you're my friend, and I can come up and say, oh my gosh, this coin, it was inside your shoes. And this was the coin that Jack Kerouac had in his loafers, and he had size 18 shoes. He had the largest shoes of any writer ever in New England. And I want you to have this coin. Do you know Bruce Marcus?
No.
He's also at Story's Place where Ralph Chadis, your cousin, is at and involved with that. Very tall guy. He told me,
Wait a minute, I do know him.
He told me, Tony, I think I got like a connection to the muse. Dang, you got a fire hose. And I never think of it like that. To me, it's just writing stuff down. But the big thing is, when somebody's done, I think that the outro is as important as the intro. I think it's actually more important because it shows that I was listening to what you had to say. And the thing about saying, hey, this is nice. The other thing is because it's an open mic, you don't know what somebody's going to stand up and say. So we've had people over the years, a woman got up and talked about her friend who was murdered 2 years ago in a park in New York City, and she wrote this moving poem about him. So when she gets done with that, I want to be able to say, thank you so much for remembering your friend. Thank you so much for bringing him back to life just for the moment you were at the microphone. Thank you for, hanging on to that friendship and sharing it with us. But then, when I'm done with that, and I've given her coin, then I've always got a pile of different things, goofy stuff to read, so that I can go ahead and make everybody laugh. And then you can get up and say, oh, I want to tell you about the pancakes I made and how bad they turned out this morning. Because if you're thinking about, oh my gosh, how can I follow the guy who died? And yet, I think the breadth of it is great. Last night, we had Judith Black, the storyteller from Marblehead, was our feature. She did a magnificent story about working with middle school kids in Salem on a theater project. And she gave it her heart and soul. But these kids, they came from such rough backgrounds that the kids, some of their parents were involved with drugs. Some of their parents were in jail. Some of the parents had been arrested for prostitution. And the things that these kids are doing just to try to hang into school. And then she would invest in them this beautiful love of theater and of storytelling, of improvisation. That's, oh yeah, here we go. It's all those big words so early.
Well, this entire show is really an improvisation because we decided that we were not going to prepare, that we were just going to talk.
Right. I think it's fine.
So my next question for you is popping out of this conversation because I want you to tell our audience what you do in schools and how you help in libraries, because I'd like them to hear a little bit about that.
That's the core of what I do. So that in 1990, I hung out my shingle and I said, I'm a storyteller. Now, you want to be able to have, I go to about 75% of my stories are out of books. So the things that are copyright free, old folk tales, it's great. The bulk of my work is to go into elementary schools and to do assemblies for the kids. Traditionally, I'll do one show for kindergarten, first and second graders, and a second show for third, fourth, and fifth graders. Now, when I go into the school, I stand up, and sometimes it depends on the vibe I get from the kids as to which story I'm going to tell. And then I end up like, they get different ones for the younger kids and then different stories for the older kids. I love, especially these older kids, the fifth graders. Storyteller. Yeah. I guess it's better in math class, not by much. So I stand up and I tell a ghost story that I call The Bog.
Tell us a story now. Tell us one. Can you do a short one?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Which one pops? There's one that I just love. Have you ever heard about the fox with a ton of brains?
No.
There was a fox. It was right here in Beverly. And the fox was walking through the forest, and he's going over Sally Mulligan Park. He'd love to be there. Now, this fox is walking along, and he sees a rabbit. And the fox says, how many brains do you have? And the rabbit looks up. Just one. Why? How many brains do you have? And fox looks over. I have a ton of brains. And rabbit says, sure you do. And fox went walking down the path, and he meets raccoon, and he says, raccoon, how many brains do you have? And raccoon looks up, just one. Why? How many brains do you have? I have a ton of brains. And raccoon thinks, sure you do, and scurried up a tree. And fox was walking, and he met little tiny mouse. And he says, mouse, how many brains do you have? Why, just one. Why? How many brains do you have, fox? I have a ton of brains. And Mouse thought, this fox needs to be taught a lesson. So Mouse says, hey, fox, come over here. I'll show you the magic spot. You want to swear on the magic spot that you have a ton of brains? And Fox thought, Mouse knows how smart I am. Sure, I'll go swear on the magic spot. And Mouse goes, come here, come here, come here. Right here, put your paw down right here. That's the magic spot. And Fox lifts up his paw to put it down, but the magic spot wasn't really a magic spot. The magic spot was really a trap. And when Fox puts his paw, and he's going, Mouse, help me, I'm stuck! And Mouse looks up, how can I help you, Fox? I only have one brain. You're the animal with a ton of brains. Oh, cut it out, Mouse, what are we gonna do? All right, Fox, you gotta lie here quiet. You can't wink, you can't blink, you can't move a muscle. But if the hunter comes and he thinks you're dead, he'll poke you, and if you don't move, he'll open up the trap, and you can run away. And that's just what happened. Hunter looks over, a fox? I never caught a fox before. Usually they're too smart to get caught. I wonder if he's dead. Poke, poke. Fox didn't move. Hunter opened up the trap. Zing! Fox takes off running. And from that day on, whenever Fox met his friends, never again did he say, I have a ton of brains. From then on, Fox just said, hello.
You know, there's so many things that are going on in just that one story because I'm in Toastmasters and we practice all of this eye contact and vocal variety and pulling it together. But it isn't easy to do. And because of the timing and the voice changes and everything else that you just incorporate, just like you're a storyteller. Oh my God.
One of the things that I love, years ago, I was at the Marblehead Festival for the Arts, and they had hired about 6 different performers over the course of the festival. And they had a big finale in this square, and everybody was there. So they had a juggler, and they had a guy on a unicycle, and they had me, and they had a puppeteer, and everybody had 10 minutes to do this grand show at the end. And one guy came up to me, my gosh, Tony, you held their attention just talking. And I said, that's what I'm supposed to do.
I know it.
If I can't do that, I really shouldn't be a storyteller.
I know. Now, I have a question because I teach public speaking to kids, and I want them to get up there and tell stories. Are there any suggestions that you might have?
I think an easy place to start, because kids, if we have a story and we got it out of a book, or we're looking at something, or I'm trying to remember how the 3 bears go, and I wonder if I got it right. So there's always that little bit of nervousness. But if you get the kids, have you ever heard of talking about your scar stories?
Talking about your scar stories.
Because if I say, when I was in 5th grade, there was a big ice puddle out on the playground on the cement where, when I was a kid, that's where you played basketball. So we were out there and the teacher said, don't run on the ice. And of course, when the teacher wasn't looking, everybody's running. My friends knew how fast to run, but I ran too fast and my feet slid across the ice. And when it came to the end and stopped and hit the concrete, my chin banged up against the concrete. And it was bleeding, and I was crying, and they called the nurse, and the nurse called Mom, and I had to get 6 stitches and come back into the school. And that's how I get a scar on my chin right
God, here. I was lost in the story, and I'm thinking, I'm not even sure where you're going.
No,
it's a scar story.
Right. So you go ahead and you ask the kids, have you ever gotten a scar? Have you ever gotten hurt? And the stories you get will be amazing. And it's also, it brings out the passion because they're having. You can ask the kids, oh, has anybody in your family ever gotten a scar? Has anybody broken a bone? And you have those. And then for your Toastmasters friends, I even think when you go out to dinner and you're going out with your friends. Now, you could go out with friends that you've known for 20 years. And the conversation gets to be a little bit of a lull as you're waiting for dessert. Ask 3 questions. How did you get your first name? What's something most people don't know about you? And the third one is the most fascinating. What's your shameless brag?
Oh, the shameless brag.
Yeah, what do you do great? It can be for love or money. My name is really Anthony. It was my father's middle name and my grandfather's middle name. I have this invisible thread connecting to these 2 men that I love that are gone. Something most people don't know about me, I really don't like lima beans. If you invited me to dinner, I would eat them, but I wouldn't be like, not asking for seconds, but I can do it.
Okay.
And then my shameless brag, I took an art class about 6 years ago, and I made a drawing. I came home and showed it to my wife, KR. And she looked at it and said, oh, that's a sneaker. And I said, yes, it is. I was so pleased that she could tell. So how did you get the name Roberta?
Oh, well, this is going to be a boring story, but my grandfather's name is Robert. And even though I didn't get to meet my grandfather, that's how I got Roberta.
Wow. Wow.
Yes, I'm just named after my grandfather.
That's beautiful, though. That's another connection there.
Yes, yes. And what was the second question?
Then what's something most people don't know about you? Nothing embarrassing, but just, so if you were out with your friends and you knew 2 of them and there was 5 other ones, you can still say it. It's because the other ones don't know.
I think most people probably don't know that I'm a really good photographer, and I also just took piano lessons.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
That could be like your shameless... Now, the shameless brag, I had a friend of ours came over from Rochester, New York. And the same thing. I was asking the questions. When we got to that one, when it came to the shameless brag, she just grinned and said, last year, I got an award from Lions International for collecting the most used eyeglasses of anybody in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And I said, Diane, how could you not tell us that? But it's like, we know our friends. We think we know them, but there's so many other little things. I didn't know you played the piano. How many years have I known you? It's cool. And it goes on.
Well, I don't think anyone's going to ask me to play the piano in a very good band, but
right.
On occasion I will definitely play.
Yeah.
But shameless brag.
Yeah.
Shameless brag is probably the fact that I think I'm a pretty good interviewer.
Oh, I think you're marvelous, darling. Just marvelous.
No, I've always dreamed of doing this, and I never thought I could do it. I've looked at all of the interviewers on TV. I watch them constantly, and I think, you just have to be natural, and you just have to listen to your guest and let them talk. So, yeah, I'll just go along with that. So I want to keep you talking, and I want you to tell me something that you want our audience to know about you. Challenging you.
I want the listening audience, when they're done watching this interview, to turn to the person next to them and tell them how they got a scar on their body. I want you to turn to the person next to you and share something at supper time, a story. If there's kids watching this, turn to your parents and say, what were you like when you were 9 years old? Kids, ask your parents, did you ever get in trouble? Kids, ask each other. Let's see, have you ever been lost, Roberta?
I have.
Where did you get lost?
I got lost at Disneyland or Disney World. I couldn't find the way out. I just couldn't find the way out, and I had the frozen ice cream with Mickey Mouse on it that didn't seem to want to melt, so that was good. And I could not find... I was probably in my 30s.
How did you look like being a 5-year-old?
No, I went down there for a conference, and I went in. I thought, I've never been there. I'm going. And then I couldn't find my way out. I finally did.
Have you ever gone to Lynn Woods?
No.
Beautiful Metro Park. So it's on one side, it's Route 1. On the bottom side, it's Walnut Street. And on the sort of this triangle, it's Route 129. So I would go over with my cousin, and we would ride mountain bikes. The only park in a city that's larger than Lynn Woods is Central Park in New York. So it's a giant, it's got to be close to 800 acres. It's huge. So you ride through there, but we get lost all the time. On a gray day when you go out, it's not raining, and you're riding around. But if we decide finally it's time for dinner, all right, well, let's just sort of head straight and see where we go. So if we parked on Walnut Street and then we end up on Route 1, we just got to ride another 45 minutes around on the roads and we'll get back to our car. We're not going to be in the woods for 3 weeks setting up flares, eating berries, trying to dig for roots and such. But to me, it's a great joy about being lost. For me, one time, my parents would drive from Defiance, Ohio, where I was born, Mom and Dad had their farm, down to Dayton to see my cousins and my aunt and uncle. Well, we stopped on a Sunday morning to go to a church, and it was a strange church that I'd never been in. I was 5 years old. I'm coming out of church, and I'm holding Dad's hand, and I'm looking around, but I don't see anybody else in the family. And then I look up, and it's not Dad. And I thought, oh my gosh, I come to a strange church, and I get a new father. This is horrible. I started crying. Dad was one person behind me. Like somehow with all us kids, I got 4 sisters and a brother, and we're all running around, and I just reached up to grab Dad's hand. I am sure Dad just winked at the guy, and then the guy looked at him, and I look up, and Dad scooped me up in an instant. But I was just, in 1 second, mortified and then thrilled that there's Dad.
Unbelievable.
And so those little stories, I think that your listeners, if they could go ahead, and we all have stories. So just at supper, it commercial time on television. Go
Think of
ahead
the
and tell
story.
each other. Do you know about the game Life Stories?
I don't.
If you
I
go
don't.
on, it's
I don't think I
it looks
do.
like it looks like Trivial Pursuit, but I don't even bother with the game board.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got these cards, and you pick the cards up, and they're great for Toastmasters for table topics.
Mm-hmm.
They would be great for people. So I have, if you want to have other questions, you look through this, and it's got questions like, what did you do around the kitchen table when you were a kid besides eat dinner?
Unbelievable.
Who taught you honesty? What's an experience you had with a key?
I'll have to
What-
buy that game.
It's magnificent. I can get you like my 20 questions I got out
That
of
would
it
be
that
great.
I printed up,
That
so
would be
something to
great.
start with. But my wife, KR, is deaf, and we had gone down to visit her father in Marshfield.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Charlie is not what I would call a touchy-feely guy. And I said, Charlie, I got this game. I'd like to hear some stories from you. Well, it's not really my time. I know it's not. Can we do it for 15 minutes? He said, all right. We did it for an hour.
I bet you did.
And
But
beautiful.
I want to wrap up our show in a way that is interesting, even more interesting, if it could be true, for our audience, because I want to hear a little bit about some new things that are coming. I know there's an event called Sharing the Fire. I know there's a couple of other things that you might want to talk about, Mass Mouth, and we'll
Yep.
wrap up with that.
Sharing the Fire is a storytelling conference that's gone on around New England. It's going to be in Amherst at the end of March. All the information is at lanes.org. They've got about 20 different workshops. This March they're going to have Elizabeth Ellis, who's a fantastic storyteller from Texas. She's coming up to be our featured speaker. It's my favorite storytelling weekend out of the whole year. Now, Massmouth is a nonprofit here in Massachusetts that does storytelling. They host story slams. And it's great because they'll have them in bars. So the people can have a couple drinks, and then for that, though, they only pick 10 names out of a hat. So maybe 30 people want to tell a story, so you don't know who's going to get picked. So everybody hangs out. They have 5 minutes, and it's on a theme.
And do you vote on them? Like, who
Yes, they
tells
have
the-
judges, and then they have an audience choice also. So they'll have a thing like It Happened on the Tee, or Rotten Love, or Obsessions. I actually won one called Obsessions. Everybody else was talking about old boyfriends and girlfriends, and I talked about, my wife says I'm obsessed with being a book collector. Just because I want a hardcover first edition with a pristine dust jacket signed by the author does not mean I'm obsessed. It just means I'm a normal book collector.
And you know what that reminded me of? That event you have at your house during the summer
Oh, yes.
with the books.
Well, that's one thing. This will be coming up in August, the 22nd Corn Party. And over the years, people come over, and I become Mr. Game Meister. So at
funny.
the party, more back to the coins, I have gold dollars. I get a roll of those, and we pass out one to anybody who wins. So one of the game that you're talking about, I invented myself. I was so proud of it. You take books, and you set them out in the street, and you make a V. So it starts out with one book, then two books, and it goes out to about 10 feet. And we call it jumping the river of books. So you jump over the first one, it's very easy, and then you go around in a circle, and then you keep getting wider and wider. And the only thing we didn't know the first time we did it, because a lot of the books are old dust jacket books, if you're a little short and you land on the book with the dust jacket, it's like ice and you go sliding in
I
the
don't know.
summer.
It was scary for me.
But you go ahead and we have spotters then to catch you before you
I
hit the
know.
ground.
And then you had another
everybody's
event.
laughing.
You were just filled with creativity. It's like a nonstop adventure.
And you go ahead. I like the LP toss, where we have this big foam target, and then you throw the LPs into it. And then, of course, we have the rock, paper, scissors. And one of the what's that word? Perennial favorites
Yeah.
is the water balloon toss out in the street. So it's all just
Unbelievable.
for fun.
So I have to wrap us up a little bit now because we're very close to the end. And I just want to say to the audience that this is an adventure. This is creativity. Tony Toledo is the master of...
Oh, thank you.
You really are. You're always happy. You're always coming up with a new idea. You're always challenging us to think a little harder and be a little more spontaneous. So I want to thank you so much for being on
Roberta.
Get Your Voice Out There.
Thank you for
Yes,
having me here.
and I want to welcome anyone else who wants to call me or get in touch with me to be on Get Your Voice Out There. We really want to get some people from the community like Tony to just have a chance to talk, have a chance to tell their story. So thank you so much. I'm Roberta Chadis. We'll see you soon.